Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and today we're going to talk about that topic that booktubers bring up so much, the reading slump and how to beat it. But I'm not going to give you a lot of tips on how to beat it, because I'm not great at doing that. I'm still in a reading slump when it comes to review books. It's not going well. But this is one specific thing that I found, specifically for mood readers, that could actually help, but not necessarily in the way you might think. So a little while ago, several weeks back at this point, I was careening towards a nuclear reading slump. Not just, oh, I'm not really feeling reading, oh, maybe I should take off a day or two for reading. No, at one point, I was genuinely considering deleting my entire TBR. Just burn it down, delete the entire Goodreads list, start over. That would have been bad because a lot of my own books I, paid for. Some of them were free ebooks, but most of them I paid for, and that would have been money lost if I had actually deleted them off the e-reading apps. Thankfully, I avoided that. I do still need to do some unhauling, but I'm not in a great mental place to do that without accidentally going way too far, so we're putting that on the back burner. Now, I was mentioning something about this on my Twitter that hey, I might delete everything, and people were giving me tips on what to do to avoid a reading slump, including mentioning some very specific recommendations for lighthearted books. But the one that one person gave me was go to the library. Now that is a fairly standard suggestion when it comes to reading slumps. Just go to the library and find new books. But it kind of got inspired from a strange place, because my sister and her nieces were over to visit. Well, my nieces were over to visit, and we were looking for things to do for small children, and we're like, oh, the library has some pretty good little kid spaces. Let's go there and just hang out. And we did. But there's something about following a toddler around, specifically two toddlers, an almost 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, that just inspires a sense of randomness in you, because toddlers don't care. They pick up and put down things completely at random, based purely on whims. And that's a really fun mindset to walk through a library with, where I was like, oh, what's this? Oh, what's this? I wonder what's over there. It's fun. And of the entire trip, I only actually picked up one book with actual intention. And that was, as I was walking through the aisles of the library, I was like, oh, I wonder if this library has the last book in that series, because for some reason the local library near me doesn't. And it did. And I read this, and it was nice. And it was a literal spur of the moment, oh, I should grab this, and immediately started reading it next. And that worked. And then, sitting on one of those lovely displays that librarians spend so much time on, we really should spend more time picking books from there, was a random nonfiction, The Sleep Fix. Well, I don't necessarily need a lot of help with my sleep. I might more be giving tips to my husband, but that's beside the point. Still, I thought I could probably pick up some tips and tricks from this, and I did actually discover some things, especially about light sources and how to use them to reinforce your own circadian rhythm. And I was really excited to just be into reading again. But more than that, I found that this was kind of like a hack for my brain that I did not notice before. Because here's the thing, I did not read all of these books, and I'm not going to. I will not be reading these other 3. But what this did, in wandering around randomly like a toddler, was I picked books that I was just naturally randomly gravitating towards, and it helped me unlock what I actually wanted to do next with my reading. Because it was so natural, letting my brain just go, ooh, this thing, I wasn't trying to stick to a TBR, a readathon, a challenge, a plan. None of it. I put the TBR challenge on hold. I'm not doing any readathon right now. I rarely do. And I thought, okay, we're just gonna go for whatever looks good. And in doing that, I discovered, for example, that I really wanted to finish more series. And so I looked on my Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, because that's the kind of nerd I am. And I discovered that I had another series that I was only one book away from finishing. So I picked up that book and finished that series, which also happened to be a Regency romance. So then I was like, ooh, I love Regency romance. And then I remember that I had another book by that author, and so I started reading that book. And then I was like, ooh, I really liked this lighthearted nonfiction. Granted, there's some talk about, like shift working and how hard it can be and the mental toll that sleeplessness takes on you. But for the most part, it was not too intense. And I remembered, oh, I've been looking at that history of boy bands nonfiction for a while. Why don't I get that? Because April is my birthday month, and so I had a gift card. And basically, in letting myself just go random, wander a library like a toddler, I let my brain pick out what it actually wanted to read instead of telling myself, well, clearly I'm in a reading slump, so clearly I need to read X, Y, and Z. Because gosh darn it, that indie shifter romance failed me. I'm heartbroken. Anyway, this again really only works if you're already a mood reader. And for me specifically, this was the perfect solution because this was how I found books as a kid. I did not read with any level of purpose for the vast majority of my life up to this point because I didn't have access. I didn't have a lot of access to the internet. I didn't have a lot of access to bookstores. My family, while not being super impoverished, we never went hungry. We definitely did not have a level of money for each of me and my siblings to have our own personal libraries. So whatever I read was whatever I could find in the school library or at yard sales or the church library, which is very limited. But regardless, that kind of random wander around the book place and pick up what looks good was how I found books for more than the first 20 years of my life. It was only when I started my BookTube channel that I started putting any real thought or purpose into this. And these days I'm like bullet journal, planning for videos. And I kind of have to put a lot of that on hold right now just because, well, my brain's not there. I've mentioned this before that 2022 is supposed to be my year of rest, and it's trying to be, but work. Regardless, I am still a little bit bummed that I cannot get myself in the right headspace for review books, but I also have to be very, very careful when it comes to headspace for review books because I don't want to be in an already bad headspace and then be giving a full review and rating of a book that was given to me for free, because then I'm risking giving a review that might either be like a full star lower than it otherwise could have been, or the review just doesn't have a lot of energy to it. So even if I gave it maybe a 5-star, it doesn't really have a 5-star energy in the review. Like, I'm not there yet, and I'm very grateful to all of the indie authors that are so cool with such gigantic wait times. But for the most part, I would not say that I am fully back up to my regular reading, and I probably won't be for at least several more weeks yet. Maybe when summer vacation comes, I can reclaim some things, but we're not there yet. I will be shocked if I pick up at any more than like 1 or 2 review books in May. But that's just kind of what we're working with these days. So if you are a mood reader and struggling to find what you should read next, let me know if you actually have tried something like this or would like to try something like this, because there is something so fun about that. And there is something very nice about being like, ooh, I want to read this book next, even if it is throwing a lot of my hard work with that TBR challenge out the window. I'll get back to unhauling eventually. But regardless, with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.